The crystalline spires of Alpha Prime caught the binary sunrise, casting prismatic rainbows across the vast council chamber. Ambassador Elena Reyes stood at the human delegation's modest podium, her weathered hands gripping the edges as she surveyed the amphitheater before her. 25 years. 25 years of sitting in these halls listening to species with millennia of spacefaring experience treat humanity like unruly children who had stumbled into a game too sophisticated for their primitive minds. The Alfarian High Chancellor Solmar presided from the elevated dais, his elongated limbs and translucent skin, giving him an ethereal quality that the other council members seemed to revere. His voice resonated through the chamber's acoustic perfection as he called the session to order. The 847th Galactic Council convenes. First order of business, the human petition for expanded colonial rights in the Outer Rim territories. Elena felt the familiar tightness in her chest. Another petition. Another polite request for basic rights that every other species took for granted. Around her, delegates from dozens of worlds settled into their ornate seats, their various forms of communication, telepathic whispers, bioluminescent flashes, harmonic vibrations creating a symphony of casual dismissal that she had learned to interpret over the decades. Ambassador Vroth of the Vexari leaned forward, his reptilian features twisted into what passed for a smirk among his kind. The Vexari had been spacefaring for over 3,000 years, a fact he never tired of mentioning. Honored Chancellor, his voice hissed through the translation matrix. Surely we need not waste time on yet another human request for privileges they have not earned. Their military technology remains restricted for good reason. Their expansion quotas are more than generous for such a young species. Elena's jaw clenched. Young species. As if wisdom was measured solely by the number of years spent among the stars, rather than by innovation adaptability or the courage to explore the unknown. She glanced toward Trade Minister Grell of the Zilarians, one of the few council members who had ever shown anything approaching respect for human capabilities. The blue-skinned minister caught her eye and offered a subtle gesture that Elena interpreted as sympathy. But sympathy would not change votes. The human petition is denied, Solmar intoned, without even calling for discussion. Next item, trade disputes between the Tellarite Collective and the Benelorian Empire. Elena remained standing as the chamber's attention shifted away from her. This was it. This was the moment she had been building toward for months, ever since her last private communication with Earth's leadership. President Morrison had been clear: if the Council would not treat humanity as equals, then humanity would find its own path among the stars. Honored Chancellor. Elena's voice cut through the beginning of the trade discussion, amplified by the chamber's acoustics, to ensure every delegate heard her clearly. I have one final matter to bring before this body. Solmar's large eyes narrowed with what Elena had learned to recognize as irritation. Ambassador Reyes, your petition has been heard and decided. Unless you have urgent council business. I do. Elena reached into her diplomatic case and withdrew a sealed document bearing the official seals of Earth's United Government. I hereby present formal notice of the Terran Federation's complete withdrawal from the Galactic Council effective in 6 months' time. The chamber fell silent. Even the constant background hum of translation matrices seemed to pause as Elena's words registered. She could feel hundreds of eyes from dozens of species focused on her as she continued reading from the prepared statement. After 25 years of participation in this body, the people of Earth have concluded that the Galactic Council does not serve our interests or recognize our contributions. We hereby renounce all treaties, trade agreements, and mutual defense pacts. All human personnel, technology, and assets will be withdrawn from Council space within 6 months. This withdrawal is final and non-negotiable. The silence stretched for several heartbeats before the chamber erupted. Delegates leaped to their feet, their various forms of exclamation, creating a cacophony that overwhelmed the translation systems. Through the chaos, Elena heard Vroth's distinctive hiss of laughter. "Baby's throwing a tantrum." The Vexari ambassador called out, his voice cutting through the noise. "Perhaps it is time they learned to survive without their better's protection." High Chancellor Solmar raised one elongated hand, and gradually the chamber quieted. His expression was unreadable as he regarded Elena. "Ambassador Reyes, this seems rather precipitous. Surely Earth's leadership understands the benefits of Council membership, the protection of our combined fleets, access to advanced technologies." Elena felt a bitter smile touch her lips. What protection? Chancellor? Human ships patrol the Outer Rim territories because Council fleets consider them too dangerous. What advanced technologies? Every innovation we've shared has been dismissed as crude or primitive, even as you quietly integrate them into your own systems. She paused, letting her words sink in. "And what benefits? We've been junior partners in name only, with restricted territory, limited military assets, and no meaningful voice in Council decisions." Trade Minister Grell rose from his seat, his blue skin shifting to deeper hues that Elena recognized as distress. "Ambassador Reyes, surely we can discuss this rationally. There must be compromises." Compromises. Elena's voice carried 25 years of accumulated frustration. "For a quarter century we have compromised. We have accepted restrictions no other member species would tolerate. We have contributed our science, our resources, our military expertise, and, in return, we have been treated as curiosities at best, threats at worst." She gathered her materials and stepped back from the podium. The time for compromises has ended. As Elena turned to leave, Solmar's voice followed her. "Think carefully about this decision, Ambassador. The galaxy is vast and dangerous. Humanity may find itself very alone." Elena paused at the chamber's entrance, looking back at the assembled delegates. "We've been alone in this chamber for 25 years, Chancellor. At least now we're honest about it." 3 days later, Elena stood on the bridge of the ISS Perseverance flagship of Earth's Third Fleet. Admiral Torres, a compact woman in her 50s, with graying hair and sharp eyes, moved efficiently between control stations as her crew began the systematic shutdown of Council-installed systems. "Gravity generators are offline," reported the chief engineer, a young lieutenant whose steady hands belied his nervousness. "We're running on ship's internal systems only." "Good," Admiral Torres replied. "I want every piece of Council technology scrubbed from our ships. If they think we're dependent on their handouts, they're about to learn otherwise." Elena watched through the viewport as similar scenes played out across the human fleet. Ships that had carried both human and Council technology for decades were being systematically purged of any alien components. It was a massive undertaking, but Earth's engineers had been preparing for this possibility for years. "Admiral," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving transmission from Outpost Sigma. Dr. Harrison reports the data purge is proceeding on schedule." "Duh." "Acknowledged," Torres replied. She moved to stand beside Elena at the viewport. "You know, Ambassador, when I first heard about this plan, I thought you were all insane. Now, I think it might be the sanest thing we've done in decades." Elena nodded, watching as a transport ship departed from the nearby research station. "Dr. Harrison's team developed half the food processing technology the Council uses, but they're still treated like laboratory assistants when they attend Council scientific conferences. No more." On Outpost Sigma, Dr. Harrison moved through his laboratory with purposeful efficiency. The tall, distinguished scientist had spent 15 years developing new food synthesis techniques that had solved hunger crises on 3 different Council worlds. Now he was systematically erasing every scrap of research data that hadn't already been transmitted back to Earth. "Doctor," his assistant called from across the lab, "what about the protein synthesis configurations for the Tellarite worlds? Those formulations took us 3 years to perfect." Dr. Harrison paused at his computer terminal, his finger hovering over the delete command. Those formulations were currently feeding billions of Tellarites whose homeworld couldn't produce adequate nutrition for their growing population. But the Council had never acknowledged human authorship of the technology, presenting it to the galaxy as a Council innovation. "Delete it all," he said quietly. "If they want to take credit for our work, they can figure out how to maintain it without us." Back in the Council chamber on Alpha Prime, an emergency session was underway. High Chancellor Solmar looked haggard as he addressed the assembled delegates. 3 weeks had passed since Elena's announcement, and the first signs of problems were beginning to surface. "The Tellarite Collective reports widespread failures in their food processing systems," Solmar announced. "They're requesting immediate technical assistance to prevent widespread nutritional deficiencies in their outer colonies." Ambassador Vroth shifted in his seat, his earlier confidence replaced by visible discomfort. "Surely this is a temporary setback. The Tellarites have always been overly dependent on exotic technologies." Trade Minister Grell stood his skin now, cycling through deep blues and purples that Elena would have recognized as extreme agitation. "With respect, Ambassador Vroth, these are not exotic technologies. They are human-designed protein synthesis systems that we've been using for over a decade. Without human technical support, we cannot maintain them." "Preposterous," another delegate called out. "The Council possesses the most advanced scientific minds in the galaxy. We can certainly manage without human assistance." "Can we?" Grell's voice carried a note of challenge that was unusual for the typically diplomatic Zilarian. 6 of our early warning systems have failed in the past week. All of them incorporated human-designed sensor arrays. Our border monitoring network is developing blind spots, and the Vraxian pirates have already begun exploiting them." Solmar raised his hand for silence. "Trade Minister Grell, surely you exaggerate the scope of the problem. Humans have been council members for only 25 years. The majority of our technology predates their membership by millennia." "That may be true, Chancellor, but human innovation has been integrated into our systems far more extensively than most realize." Grell activated a holographic display that showed the Council's infrastructure network. Red indicators began appearing across the galaxy, each one marking a system with human-designed components. Food processors, defense grids, environmental controls, communications relays. Human technology has become the backbone of our modern infrastructure. The chamber fell silent as delegates absorbed the implications. Elena had known this moment would come. Earth's engineers were not just skilled. They were innovative in ways that species with millennia of established technology often were not. While the older races had perfected their systems over thousands of years, humans brought fresh perspectives and creative solutions to problems that others had long accepted as unsolvable. 5 weeks after Elena's announcement, the first major crisis struck. The Vraxian Marauders pirates, who had been contained for decades by Council border defenses, launched a coordinated assault on the Nibar system. The attack should have been detected hours before the pirates reached inhabited worlds, giving the Council fleet time to respond. Instead, the early warning network, crippled by cascading failures in human-designed sensor arrays, remained silent until Vraxian ships were already bombarding planetary surfaces. Elena received the news aboard the Perseverance, as Admiral Torres conducted fleet exercises in the outer edges of Earth's solar system. The human fleet had withdrawn completely from Council space, taking with them not just their ships, but their personnel, their expertise, and their institutional knowledge of systems they had helped design and maintain. The death toll on Nibar III is estimated at over 50,000. The communications officer reported, his voice grim. The Vraxians withdrew before Council forces could respond, but they captured 3 transport ships and an orbital processing facility. Admiral Torres studied the tactical reports with professional interest. They exploited a gap in sensor coverage in the Kappa sector. That's been a known vulnerability for years, but the Council never addressed it, because human-designed sensor platforms filled the gap. Elena felt a familiar weight in her chest. Those were real people who had died, not abstract casualties in a political game. But she forced herself to remember the years of condescension, the restrictions, the casual dismissal of human contributions. Have we received any communications from the Council? 3 official requests for technical assistance, the communications officer replied, all marked urgent. And our response? As per your instructions, Ambassador referred to the Earth Council for consideration under standard diplomatic protocols. Elena nodded. Those protocols would require formal recognition of human expertise, acknowledgement of past contributions, and negotiations as equals, everything the Council had refused to provide for 25 years. On Alphar Prime, the situation was rapidly deteriorating. High Chancellor Solmar convened another emergency session as reports flooded in from across Council space. The Tellarite Collective was facing widespread food riots as protein synthesis systems failed. Gravity generators on the prosperous Bentharian trading worlds were experiencing intermittent failures, sending citizens and cargo floating helplessly through commercial districts. Most critically, the border defense grid that protected Council space from external threats was developing more gaps every day. We must contact Earth directly. Trade Minister Grell urged, his skin cycling through urgent reds and oranges. These problems are beyond our current capability to solve. Ambassador Vroth's reptilian features twisted with anger. You suggest we crawl to the humans and beg for assistance. We are the Galactic Council. We guided civilization among the stars for 3 millennia before these apes even discovered fire. And where has our pride brought us? Another delegate demanded. My homeworld's children are starving because we cannot maintain food processors that we have relied upon for decades. The Vraxians raid our territory with impunity because our sensors cannot detect them. At what point does pride become suicide? Solmar struggled to maintain order as the chamber erupted in arguments. The elegant diplomacy that had characterized Council proceedings for generations was crumbling under the weight of cascading system failures. Species that had coexisted peacefully for centuries were beginning to eye each other with suspicion as trade routes failed and security deteriorated. We will send a formal communication to Earth, Solmar finally declared. We shall offer incentives for their technical cooperation. Incentives. Grell's skin shifted to an incredulous yellow. Chancellor, with respect, the humans have withdrawn from Council space entirely. They have established their own trade routes, their own defense networks, their own research facilities. What incentives can we offer to people who no longer need anything we provide? The question hung in the air unanswered as the assembled delegates grappled with a reality they had never imagined. They needed humanity more than humanity needed them. Elena received the Council's formal communication while reviewing reports from Earth's expanding civilian settlements in the Outer Rim. In the 2 months since humanity's withdrawal, Earth's government had authorized the establishment of 12 new colonies in systems the Council had considered too dangerous or unprofitable to develop. Without Council restrictions limiting their military technology and expansion quotas, human settlement was proceeding at an unprecedented rate. The Council's message was politely worded, but desperate in its implications. They offered trade concessions, research partnerships, and even limited representation in Council governance in exchange for technical assistance with failing systems. Elena read through the document twice before activating her secure communication link to Earth. President Morrison appeared on the view screen, his lined face showing the strain of managing humanity's sudden expansion. I've seen the Council's offer, Elena. Your assessment? Too little too late, Elena replied without hesitation. They're still thinking in terms of making concessions as if we're negotiating for scraps from their table. They want our help, but they're not prepared to acknowledge that we're equals. The situation in Council space is deteriorating rapidly, Morrison noted. Intelligence reports suggest the Vraxian raids are becoming more frequent and more successful. If the Council's defense grid collapses entirely, then they'll face the same challenges humanity has always faced surviving in a dangerous galaxy, through their own strength and ingenuity. Elena's voice carried no sympathy. We offered partnership for 25 years. They chose patronization instead. And if they come to terms, if they're prepared to treat us as true equals. Elena considered the question carefully. Then we'll negotiate. But the terms will be very different from anything they've offered so far. The crisis came 6 weeks later. A massive Vraxian fleet, emboldened by the growing gaps in Council defenses, launched a coordinated assault on 3 major systems simultaneously. The attack was perfectly timed to exploit the blind spots in the sensor network, and the Vraxian commanders demonstrated detailed knowledge of Council defensive weaknesses that could only have come from careful observation over many months. Elena watched the tactical reports from the bridge of the Perseverance as Admiral Torres analyzed the unfolding battle. Council fleets were responding as quickly as they could, but without early warning they were always one step behind the raiders. Worse, the Vraxians were specifically targeting infrastructure nodes that contained human-designed components, suggesting they understood exactly how to cripple Council capabilities. It's like watching a master chess player against amateurs, Admiral Torres observed. The Vraxians know exactly which pieces to take to collapse the whole board. How many casualties? Elena asked quietly. Preliminary reports suggest over 200,000 dead or missing across the 3 systems, the communications officer reported. The Vraxians are also capturing civilian transports and industrial facilities. Intelligence suggests they're establishing permanent bases in Council territory. Elena closed her eyes briefly. 200,000 people. The abstract political maneuvering suddenly felt very concrete and very personal. But she also knew that capitulating now would only delay the inevitable. The Council needed to understand that respect could not be demanded. It had to be earned. Admiral, what would it take to drive off the Vraxian fleets? Torres pulled up tactical projections on the main display. 3 fast attack groups could hit them from unexpected vectors, while they're focused on Council responses. The Vraxians are using classic raider tactics: hit hard, grab what they can and run before serious opposition arrives. But their retreat routes assume the Council doesn't have forces positioned in the outer system approaches. Time frame: 18 hours to reach optimal attack positions. Another 6 hours to coordinate with any Council forces that want to join the operation. Elena stared at the tactical display, weighing her options. Every choice had consequences, and every consequence would echo through history. Open a channel to High Chancellor Solmar. Priority 1 encryption. The view screen flickered, and Solmar's elongated face appeared, his features showing exhaustion, and something Elena had never seen before: fear. Ambassador Reyes, I thank you for responding to our communications. Chancellor, I'm going to say this once, and I want you to listen very carefully. Elena's voice was calm, but carried absolute authority. Humanity can help you. We can drive off the Vraxian raiders, repair your failing systems, and restore stability to Council space. But we will do so only as equals, with full recognition of our capabilities and contributions. Solmar's large eyes showed a flicker of his old arrogance. Ambassador, surely we can find some accommodation? No accommodations, no concessions, no junior partnerships. Elena's voice cut through his diplomatic evasions. Full membership with unrestricted research rights, unlimited expansion quotas, and equal representation in all Council decisions. Or you can face the Vraxians alone. The channel fell silent as Solmar processed her words. In the background, Elena could hear urgent conversations and what sounded like shouting. Finally, the Chancellor spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. What guarantee do we have that humanity will honor such an agreement? Elena felt a bitter smile touch her lips. Chancellor, for 25 years humanity honored every agreement we made with the Council, even as you restricted our rights and dismissed our contributions. The question isn't whether we'll honor our agreements. The question is whether you're finally ready to honor yours. I I will need to consult with the full council. You have 6 hours, Elena replied. After that, we implement our own security arrangements for council space. The channel closed, leaving Elena alone with her thoughts and the weight of 2 centuries of human dreams among the stars. In 6 hours, humanity would either claim its rightful place as an equal partner in galactic civilization, or it would forge its own path through a galaxy that had never learned to respect strength combined with innovation. Admiral Torres approached her station. Ma'am, Third Fleet is ready to deploy on your orders. But I have to ask, are you prepared for the possibility that they'll refuse? Elena nodded slowly. Then we save who we can protect what we must, and let the Council learn what the galaxy is like without human protection. She paused, looking out at the stars that had called to humanity for so long. Either way, Admiral, we're going home. The only question is whether we're going as partners or as conquerors. 5 hours and 37 minutes later, Elena's communication board chimed with an incoming priority transmission. She wasn't surprised to see Solmar's face on the screen, but she was surprised by the transformation in his demeanor. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something approaching humility. Ambassador Reyes. Solmar began his voice formal, but no longer condescending. The Galactic Council has voted to accept Earth's terms. Full membership, unrestricted rights, equal representation. We formally request military assistance against the Vraxian incursion. Elena felt a moment of triumph, quickly tempered by the magnitude of the task ahead. Understood, Chancellor. Admiral Torres will coordinate with your fleet commanders. But I want to be very clear. This is not a rescue. This is a partnership. Human forces will operate under human command with full tactical autonomy. Agreed, Solmar replied immediately. Ambassador, I want you to know that many of us have come to realize our mistakes. The Council has been diminished by our treatment of humanity, and we are grateful for this opportunity to begin again. Beginning again will require more than words, Chancellor. But it's a start. Elena signaled to Admiral Torres, who immediately began issuing orders to the fleet. We'll speak again when the immediate crisis is resolved. 18 hours later, Elena stood on the bridge of the Perseverance as human and Council forces engaged the Vraxian raiders in the Nabar system. Admiral Torres had deployed the Third Fleet in a coordinated assault that caught the raiders completely off guard. While Council forces engaged them directly, human ships struck from unexpected angles, using their superior maneuverability and targeting systems to devastating effect. Vraxian flagship is breaking off, the tactical officer reported. They're signaling general retreat. Let them go, Torres ordered. But make sure they understand Council space is under new management. Elena watched the retreating Vraxian vessels with satisfaction. The message would spread quickly through the pirate networks. The easy targets were gone. The Council's protective umbrella was back stronger than ever, with human innovation backing Council resources. Admiral, the communications officer called out. We're receiving thanks from 3 Council admirals, 2 planetary governors, and High Chancellor Solmar wants to speak with you personally. Elena nodded. Put him through. Solmar's image appeared on the main screen, and for the first time in 25 years, Elena saw genuine respect in his expression. Ambassador Reyes, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I thank you. Your tactical expertise has saved thousands of lives and prevented a catastrophic collapse of our defensive capabilities. Thank you, Chancellor. But remember, this was just the first test. True partnership will require sustained effort from both sides. Understood, Solmar replied. We would like to invite a human delegation to Alpha Prime to begin negotiations for a new treaty framework. One that reflects our revised understanding of humanity's role in galactic affairs. Elena felt the weight of history settling around her. I'll be there in 72 hours, Chancellor. And this time, the negotiations will be held according to human diplomatic protocols. Solmar's expression showed a flicker of uncertainty. Human protocols. Equal seating, equal speaking time, equal vote weights. Elena's voice carried a note of gentle steel. "The era of human supplicants is over, Chancellor. Welcome to the age of human partners." 3 days later, Elena found herself back in the council chamber, but everything had changed. The human delegation now occupied a position of equal prominence with the other major powers, and their technology requirements and territorial needs were being discussed as matters of right, rather than privilege. Dr. Harrison had been recalled from his research station to serve as chief scientific advisor, and his expertise was sought rather than dismissed. The new Treaty of Equals was signed in a ceremony that was broadcast across human space and throughout the council worlds. Elena watched as representatives from dozens of species affixed their marks to a document that finally acknowledged what should have been obvious from the beginning, that strength and wisdom could emerge from any world, and that true civilization was built on mutual respect rather than ancient prejudices. As the ceremony concluded, Trade Minister Grell approached Elena with his characteristic blue shifting skin patterns, indicating pleasure and relief. "Ambassador, I wanted to thank you personally. Your courage in forcing this crisis may have saved the Council from its own short-sightedness." Elena smiled genuinely, for the first time in months. Minister Grell Courage was sitting in that chamber for 25 years, watching my people be dismissed and belittled, and still believing that cooperation was possible. What we did was simply stop accepting unacceptable behavior. "And the result has been transformative," Grell replied. "Already our engineers are reporting breakthrough insights from collaborating with human researchers as equals, rather than supervisors. The technological fusion possibilities are extraordinary." Elena nodded, looking around the chamber where human and alien delegates were mingling freely, sharing ideas and perspectives, without the artificial barriers that had constrained interaction for so long. "The galaxy is vast, Minister Grell. There's room for all of us to grow and learn together." 6 months later, Elena stood in the observation deck of New Geneva Station, humanity's newest deep space facility, watching as the first mixed-species exploration fleet prepared for departure. Human ships flew alongside Alfarian vessels, Zilarian research platforms, and even a few Tellarite colony ships, all bound for the unexplored regions beyond the galactic rim. Admiral Torres joined her at the viewport, both women watching the magnificent sight of true interstellar cooperation. "You know, Ambassador, I never thought I'd see the day when human and council vessels would fly together as genuine equals." "Neither did I," Elena admitted. "For years, I wondered if we were fighting a hopeless battle, trying to earn respect from species that would never see us as anything but newcomers and upstarts." "What changed?" Elena considered the question carefully. "We stopped asking for respect and started demanding it. More importantly, we stopped accepting treatment that was beneath our dignity." She paused, watching as the fleet began its departure sequence. "Sometimes, the only way to prove you're ready for a seat at the table is to get up and walk away from it." The fleet disappeared into the star-filled darkness, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of a dozen species united in purpose, rather than divided by prejudice. Elena knew there would be challenges ahead. There always were when different cultures tried to work together. But for the first time in her diplomatic career, she was confident that those challenges would be met as equals, with each species contributing its unique strengths to the common good. Humanity had come to the stars, seeking knowledge, adventure, and a place among the galactic community. They had found condescension restrictions and casual dismissal. But by refusing to accept less than they deserved, they had ultimately achieved something far greater than mere membership in an existing order. They had helped transform that order into something worthy of the species that comprised it. As Elena made her way back to her office to prepare for the next day's negotiations, this time concerning humanity's proposal for a joint university, where young beings from all species could learn together, she reflected on the long journey that had brought them to this point. The path had been difficult sometimes, painful but ultimately necessary. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, and now finally humanity would explore it, not as junior partners or probationary members, but as equals among equals. The age of human isolation was over. The age of true galactic civilization had begun.